Hey, left, right, out. I'm going to talk again more about, one of the markets where we get into this Hunter Biden thing, this laptop issue. Because I pulled up an article and I was reading through it, and it's amazing. It's dated 10/19/2020, and it's from Politico, and it basically goes over the 50 former intelligence officials that signed a letter claiming that this has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. And also, you can read in here John Brennan. He goes in here and says, you know, where is it at? The intelligence community leaders who have signed this letter have worked for the past four presidents, including Trump. The real powers here, however, is the number of former working level ICE intelligence, whatever leaders, officers who want the American people to know that once again the Russians are interfering. Yeah, right, right. This whole thing, after a number of years of there's still stuff going on about RussiaGate. Apparently, a lot of these documents are going to be released by Durham. That's a side topic there, too, of what was going on there. But here we go. The FBI, instead of trying to validate and see if this is a source, here they go. Here's the DNI director, the NI, or whatever, Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe. Bam, this is from back then. Said that the information on lab type is not part of some Russian disinformation campaign. Okay, well, that's what made sense. That's what it turns out to be the truth. But the next sentence is what's kind of alarming. Though the FBI is reportedly conducting an ongoing investigation into whether Russia was involved. So instead of trying to validate or trying to see what was on there or whatnot, they're trying to see if the Russians were involved. Which now we have some, there's apparently a grand jury that's looking into Hunter Biden's finances, but. So that's that's just one inkling of an article the articles that were going around. I mean, it goes into a lot more. If you just go and look up stuff that was going on October 2020, and see and type in this Hunter Biden laptop thing, which is eerie that you go on the Google and it's not in like a preferred search. You have to type in Hunter Biden laptop thing. That's pretty crazy in a sense, since this is one of the most damning things I've ever seen when it comes to political corruption. Because you read some of the emails, and then you see some of the videos, and you're like, whoa, this is incredible. But we go over here, and yeah, they're still talking about Steele dossier. So I let me pull this up. I had it right here. What was Hunter Biden doing in China and Ukraine? I mean, a number of millions of dollars funneled in through some certain Chinese business partners. Hunter Biden, when he got, obviously the board membership on Burisma. Some of, apparently they were sharing bank accounts, him and the president. But here's the other thing, and this is what I wanted to bring up, which I haven't heard this guy's name in a while. I'm sorry if I'm talking fast, as I try to keep these within a certain time frame. But Tony Bobulinski, remember that guy? He came out and he's on Fox News and all that, corroborating some of these emails, like, what age, here's one of the quoted from one of the emails, which happened to be, he verified it because he was apparently on this email and saw it was like 10 held by H, which he, it's Hunter, for the big guy. And the big guy was presumably the vice president at the time, Joe Biden, the current president. But then you also, you look at, you look at Tony Bobulinski, and he was kind of ravaged by the news outlets, and now he's vindicated in a sense, as of now that the laptop has been acknowledged. And I wonder, I haven't really looked at what happened to that guy, but it'd be interesting to get his thoughts on what's going on now that, what he said back then with Tucker Carlson, and came out, and he was apparently threatened, or not so much threatened, but kind of insinuated that he shouldn't be coming out to do this kind of thing, but he did, to kind of enlighten us on who or these emails were legit. But also, so we all owe him an apology if you ever were skeptical of him. And it'd be nice to see what he has to say about it today. Now, we also go to the shop owner that had the laptop that called the FBI. They gave a copy to Rudy Giuliani's lawyer. His shop apparently is not going so hot. He's the recipient of a number of malice emails, and it seems like a lot of things are going bad in his life, and that is unfortunate that a person doing the right thing or trying, and it's not like he the first action was to call the FBI or give this. He tried to get a hold of Hunter to give him the laptop. He saw some things on there when he was fixing it, because you go through there. If you see certain things, you're if you're in law enforcement or anything, you're obligated to report it, or if you're in medical community. But in my opinion, he probably felt obligated to report certain things that he's seen, and I don't know what is on there, but I suspect, and what the rumor mill is, there are some some things that are of a sexual nature with underage people, and that's not good. But then you also see the corruption. That's what we're seeing, and that's what we're getting. We get to see the sexual depravity too of him as well, with what we presume to be like a Russian prostitute in one of them, which we really don't know if that's the case. She could be some kind of executive for all we know. But he's got ties with a number of different individuals. So everything that has been said about him is essentially at least based in some sort of truth, and why this guy is walking around free, and why the president is outstanding. This was a huge operation by a number of media outlets, and if you can't see the collusion between big tech media and the government, and one wing of the government, let's say, or one party of the government, then I don't know what to tell you, because they withheld this, and I think the poll showed that 10% of the voters would have changed their vote if they had even known about this or known it to be true. But anyway, it's pretty interesting that Trump gets impeached over a call with Zelensky, trying to look into some of this corruption, and then now we got verifiable evidence that the corruption occurred, and there's nobody doing anything to Biden. Because if the Democratic Party was actually honorable and lived by certain standards, they would demand answers now and push for an impeachment of their president, or our president. And it doesn't matter what party he is, or if it was Trump too. If this kind of verifiable evidence came out against Trump, then hey, we should have impeached him. Then we should have impeached him for looking into the corruption and doing the very thing that Joe Biden did, apparently withholding funds. That's what they were accusing him of. Joe Biden actually did withhold funds, unless they were going to, lest Ukraine was going to fire a prosecutor that just so happened to be looking into Burisma board members, of which one of them's Hunter Biden. So you look at the conflict of interest and the double standard here. So it's hard to that's what reeks of corruption. That's what upsets people and myself. If we need to live by certain principles, and it's like, it doesn't matter whose team you're on. It's just, if you do something wrong, let's do it. So if you're going to hold Trump to one standard, let's hold this president to the same standard then. And he's way above that. If any standard, that he needs to be investigated and impeached at this point. But there's also another thing in here, and it seems to be like the same group of characters are involved same group of agencies seem to be involved in all this mess, and from lying to Trump to kind of trying to set Trump up to obfuscating investigations of politically tied individuals. And that goes back to these, I can say the intelligence agencies, but now the FBI. The FBI has been kind of weaponized as kind of almost like a brown shirt organization that goes after political enemies, in a sense. No, they do a lot of good stuff too. You can't. None of this is all black and white. There's shades, and there's compartmentalization in these organizations, and there's a lot of good people, honorable people and unfortunately they get kind of washed out after they come across some of these careerists, is what I like to call them in military terms. People that are willing to do anything to further their own careers. In fact, stabbing other people in the back or doing things that are unethical. So there's a lot of those people that have accumulated over the years in the FBI and other organizations, intelligence organizations in particular. and they're willing to put their political leanings at the forefront of policy, or conducting business within their organization, even though they're supposed to be impartial for justice, the way nobody is anymore. But so the FBI has really undermined itself in that, and then we just find out in Project Veritas, they've come out with evidence that despite a court order in their lawsuit, which that's a whole nother thing, they're in court over this whole diary that they received that was from Joe Biden's daughter, and it had some weird stuff in there. I'll just say that. And even though it was almost assuredly a legit diary from her, Project Veritas decided not to publish it, and they even contacted the FBI, I believe, as FBI or the DOJ. I can't remember who it was. It was essentially, same, two fingers on the same arm or same hand. So they, either way, they contacted these guys to give it to them because they weren't going to publish it. And instead, they get a raid, and get a lot of their stuff seized. Well, the judge came in. They have they appoint what they call a special master, which is kind of like an overseer to ensure that certain things are up to snuff, right? Well, apparently the DOJ or the FBI itself has gone around that judge's order and has set up a way to just defy the executive branch, or not the executive, the judicial branch of the government. So you just think about that for a second. And the fact that of all these scandals within these three-letter agencies, how many of these individuals have actually been held accountable? It seems as though if you do certain things, you can be protected. You can, in fact, advance in your career. And this happens to be another one of those FBI scandals where they're blatantly going outside their own dictates there and defying a court order. So that's incredible, but that's just one string of a long laundry list of things that have undermined the mission statement and the integrity of another three-letter organization. And I don't know how at this point, if it were me, in order to even save such a law enforcement agency, you would have to wipe out all the mid-level and upper-level management and bring in outsiders with integrity. I'd even former military officers, possibly, to reconstruct this with honor and put it back to what it was intended to be. Granted, this organization really hasn't been completely what it was intended to be from the beginning with J. Edgar Hoover, but at least there was some sense of honor there. But J. Edgar Hoover was notorious for being almost like a fourth branch of government and secretly spying on all sorts of political politicians and keeping files on them. So it's hard to argue even then that this organization was living up to the standards that it should have been. But if you want to sacrifice, or if you want to maintain such an organization, we need to go in and clean house. And that's the same with the intelligence community as well, because at this point there are almost like a Praetorian Guard. Like I said, I related the FBI to like a brown shirt, but they're almost a Praetorian Guard, because at this point they are essentially appointing people. So they didn't want Trump, so they effectively got Trump out, and I can't see Biden really being in charge, so I'm thinking they're effectively operating him as a puppet in a sense, and some of the other political apparatus there. But so they're in a sense a parallel. Nothing in history, because people would come, well, this was this and this was that in history. Well, nothing in history is directly 100% correlated, but they parallel, right? History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So these organizations remind me of sort of Praetorian Guard picking leaders and defying rules in a sense in order to solidify its own power and agendas. and this is a very late stage Roman Empire-esque. Well, I didn't even get into Russia or Ukraine today, but it's pretty. That's a whole nother level. We're talking about. I'll just say this: Russia. One of the most significant things I've seen, which is pretty interesting, is that they're willing to sell their energy to certain actors, let's say like Europe, or but they may start demanding payment in rubles, which would be very interesting. It'd be good for their currency more than likely you'd have to go over there and exchange for rubles in order to purchase whatever natural gas or oil or whatever from there. So it's an interesting move by them economically, and with them taking economic bullets in a sense. So we'll see how we're gonna see how this is still playing out. The market's really. I even gotten to hang on, let me check this real quick. Oh man, okay, we got a couple more minutes. So let's get into the market real quick. Market was down today. A little flight to safety. People are still using the 10-year as a little bit of flight to safety. You've seen a little bit of a rally there, but the yield is still over. It's still solid. I mean, it's two. I think it's 2.3 right now. Two, which is pretty outstanding. That was an outstanding move. It went from 2.41, so almost essentially 2.4% down to 2.3. So there was a flush into safety there, which I don't know if that's really a safe haven. You had oil at 114. I think there's a turning here. Like I said, there's a lot of uninitiated investors of my generation. There's all algorithmic trading. There's a lot of, which is interesting because I saw this commercial about basically essentially the average person you put in there and have computer generated portfolios built for them. And you can just invest in it. And you just think about the absurdity of that when it comes to these when you have geopolitical events and just the absurdity of that, and how the lost the word, but the precarious nature of that, and you can get into some big trouble. But anyway, it was down. The Dow was down essentially 450. S&P was off 55 points. Was essentially, if you look at that percentage wise, it's like 1 point something percent. That's a pretty, it's a pretty good move. But it's been going straight up the last few days. There's been a lot of retail buying. But here's the more pertinent statistic that was released, and it goes back to what I was talking about that before and previous things about the housing market. We now have that mortgage rate going up to close to 4.5%, which we can talk about. There's other debt market instruments that are going haywire here and there, but we had mortgages just fall off, mortgage demand fall off, but rising prices in houses still, which is incredible. So as these interest rates keep pushing, you're going to have less people getting into being able to afford mortgages at current housing prices. So what does that tell you? Then you're going to have a subsequent drop in either demand for those mortgages, which we're seeing that, or the price is going to have to correlate that. So there's going to be a lot of people going underwater or essentially stagnant housing market. I don't even know what I haven't really gone to the old brain housing group to think about the second and third order effects of that and what's really gonna happen. I just know it's gonna happen just from understanding the way these mechanisms work, unless they keep printing money. But essentially, right now in a rising interest rate environment, you are going to collapse the prices in the housing market, or you're just going to sell less if you're going to go up on the supply. Or you go up and down in the supply and demand curve. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting fallout. I don't think, as of 2008, I don't think there's as many adjustable rate mortgages. So there's going to be a lot of people that might be able to, though they won't be as incentivized to sell, even though they're underwater, because they're at a fixed rate at a good interest rate. Then you might as well just hold on. But they're not going to get out of that house anytime soon. If they need to get out of that house, you're going to be selling underwater. So short selling in a sense, or what they call it in the real estate market and whatever. Short selling in the market's a little bit different. But so it will be, we're entering some interesting waters. And I don't know what to tell you on that. Just keep an eye out. But like I've said before, watch that bond market. Even though there's a flight to safety here, we're well over 2.25 on the 10-year, and it inverted yesterday. I haven't checked it today to see what the 5-year and the short-term notes are going for, but it's pretty interesting times, and it doesn't look good on the world stage. On the domestic stage, And I just hope we can get through this without with as little pain as possible. Anyway, I'll talk to you later. Peace.